of that a woman's right to decide whether she wants to have an abortion or not. Now, in the Philippines, that is illegal.
Yeah.
And in the United States, it used to be illegal back in 1973. But before 1973, just like in the Philippines, it still happens.
Yeah. Whether, legal or illegal, it's, it's ongoing.
I'm not sure what that means, but...
Yeah.
But,
that's why we cannot share.
Oh, okay. A little technical thing going on here. But in any case, what they, the Republicans in Congress who have been, I guess what they say, biting their tongues while Trump was in the office, they were just waiting for the moment that they could get one or two justices into the Supreme Court so they might be able to get this law overturned. And even though a lot of them didn't like Donald Trump, they kept him in there because they really wanted these justices. And then it turns out that Donald Trump got 3. He got 3 in 4 years. Most presidents only get 1 in 8 years. But Trump was able to manage 3 in just 4 years, and he got these super conservative judges that don't match the mind of the country. And they put these in, and now they think they're going to overturn this law, which 80% of Americans believe that abortion should be legal in some form. And, 60% of them, say it should be legal, and then the rest of the 20% is kind of broken up. And then there's the people that say that it shouldn't be legal at all. But the document that was leaked, boy, that was hardcore. That really said that it wasn't like a little bit of both sides. It was like completely to one side. Like abortion should be illegal.
Wow. Well, depends on, where you are, because abortion is not really, especially the Christian countries, it's not allowed. It's funny that abortion is allowed in almost all major countries now. And that countries have been continually expanding that law. And there's always, in every country, there's a portion of the country that doesn't believe in it because usually of some kind of religious reason. Yeah. The right to life, that every child has the right to be born, under God's law and so forth. But in the United States, most people are okay with it. And there is a very few part of the public, usually white men, who have been trying since 1973 to overturn this law, and now they finally will be able to do it. Wow.
So that's going to be, I'm sure we are going to talk about this yet again. But what's interesting is you would think, and then we'll get to the questions here, that the Republicans would be jumping up and down, but they're not really. They're actually more interested in who the leak came from, because that law at the Supreme Court building is not that big. We know everybody that works there. One of those people leaked this thing. Who was the person that leaked it? Or was it one of the justices? So that's something that they're going to be
I want to know.
Trying to figure out who this is going to be. And they're also saying that this was done by the Democrats because of the midterms that are coming up. The midterms, okay. The Democrats are not that smart. But anyway, so that is the big news that is coming out of the United States, and I'm sure we'll get to that sooner or later. But right now, I want to get to the questions that people in our viewing audience have.
Oh, finally, Eric.
Finally.
After the long talk of yours.
I'm sorry that I get going so much.
Yeah, but this is very interesting to know about that story of, Putin, the BFF of President Duterte. Now, let's...
They love each other.
Oh, for sure. All right. Number one question from Edio Parañaque. Is this true? Trump launching missiles into Mexico to destroy drug lords? Tell me about it, Eric. What is this? Why Mexico?
All right. Mark Esper. And we have talked about Mark Esper on the show before. He was the defense secretary of Donald Trump, among many defense secretaries. And he's come out with a new book.
Lolly, I don't see how these guys keep coming out with new books because Donald Trump makes you sign a non-disclosure agreement. So how do they keep writing these books? But everybody's got a book. So Mark Expert's got a book, and it comes out, and he says that Trump was concerned about all the drugs coming in from the southern border over Mexico. And Trump had this idea that they could take out the labs and the drug lords with missiles. And he told Esper, why don't we use some of those Patriot missiles and fly them into Mexico, and then we'll keep it secret so nobody will know. Now, Mark Esper wrote that if it had been anybody else but Trump, he would have thought it was a joke. First of all, Patriot missiles, that's not how they work. Patriot missiles don't fire into, they shoot other missiles, whatever. And also, who else in the world has Patriot missiles? It's a U.S. thing. Of course they're going to know where it came from. So Trump also had this weird plan that he was going to amass 250,000 troops at the Mexican border.
Okay.
But he wanted to do this without the knowledge of the Joint Chiefs or the Secretary of Defense. It was a secret. They were planning this whole thing on the side, this crazy, ridiculous thing. So supposedly, Stephen Miller, who is one of the associates there of Trump, had this idea. Remember when they killed al-Baghdadi, one of the big terrorist leaders, and they killed him. They shot a missile in, and they finally killed this guy. He wanted to find this guy, find the body, cut the head off, dip it in blood, and then walk around with it as a deterrent to other terrorists. So Esper came in, and his eye, he said, his mouth dropped open. He's like, what are you guys talking about? This is highly illegal. This is a war crime. We can't do this.
Yeah.
And then there was this other issue about the fact that he wanted the military to seize the ballot boxes after the election. And Esper said, he told his people, if you see anything like this happening, let me know. Like if this is some secret thing that they have to steal the ballot boxes, we can't do that. That's illegal. So this is what, Mark Esper has this new book out now. All these Trump people keep having their books coming out, and they're always got some shocking new thing about like shooting missiles into Mexico and then acting like they're secret.
Okay, Eric, why don't you and I make a book like this?
We could have a book.
Some funny book, whatever. Anyway, let's go to Peter of Quezon City.
All the things we've said about Trump, I'm sure we could write a book.
Yeah, about everybody. What is the prediction of General Kenny on how Russia-Ukraine war will end?
All right, yeah, okay. So General Kenny, he's a 4-star general who is there on Fox News a lot. Who wrote this question?
Oh, this is from Jim. Hang on. Peter from Quezon City.
Okay, maybe he watches a lot of Fox News. So this general has been very vocal about the war in Ukraine. But the point I think that's very interesting, he said a lot of things about this war, but what was interesting, I think about, and I've seen him a lot, this thing that he said about Putin's demise, that most likely it will come from his inner circle. He believes that win or lose this war, Putin has nowhere to go. He has no legacy. And it's all about bringing back the Soviet Union and consolidating power, like we talked about in the Stalin bit early in the show. He cannot do that. And so it's over, according to this guy. He said if he loses in Ukraine, or just starts doing merry-go-rounds of consistent stalemates with the Ukrainians, someone eventually is going to have had enough, and someone who is going to step in and be his successor cannot allow Putin to live. And there cannot be, according to this man, there cannot be a retirement for Putin. When his presidency is over, he will not be allowed to live anymore. And even this Russian politician that they were talking about, said Putin's got himself into this war and he cannot win. And basically, this is going to be his own death sentence. And then there's another issue that this same general brought up about Putin's health. He says that Putin has Parkinson's disease. I know. There's been a lot of speculation about this Parkinson's disease, and also that he might have stomach cancer, which is the reason that he carries a medical team around him all the time with an oncologist. Wow. So, the question is, can Putin bring back the Russian Empire like Stalin had long ago before he's either killed or he dies from a medical condition?
Well, Again, wait and see.
I mean, this is a big wait and see. It's
Yeah.
be interesting to see how this all plays out.
All right, let's go to Jim Ortigas. Is there really torture and execution by Russian linked forces on civilian in Central African Republic since 2019? What do you know about this?
All right, this is a fascinating story, and it goes back to the Ukraine. You remember a while back when we were talking about these Russian separatists that were in Ukraine fighting the military in the Ukraine? This is before the war. This is, in Donbas, right there on the border, the Ukrainian border. And there was an uprising in support of Russia, which is, part of the reason why they began the invasion right there, because they immediately took Donbas, because supposedly that's where the Russian separatists were. And you see this in the world, that there are people that if you want, you can hire people to fight for you. And there's a group, actually, called the Wagner Group. It's a private military contractor. For the right price, you can hire this company to fight your wars for you and destabilize a country, maybe even assassinate a leader. They have many specialties in this group. And the good thing about these guys, the reason that they're great to hire is they are not subject to international laws. If Russia goes into a country and starts killing people, then there's going to be problems, such as with the Ukraine and the incredible international laws that they are breaking by being there. But this is a massive military operation. These little small operations, like these guys that were in Donbas, those are easy to get your buddies, such as like one of your friends who might be a rich oligarch, to finance a contractor, and then he goes in and does all the stuff, and that keeps your hands clean, especially if, they were to violate human rights. Raping, killing women, torturing citizens, stuff like that. Okay, so let's move to Central Africa, where white, Russian-speaking military types have been torturing and killing civilian citizens with complete immunity. There's no one there to stop them. These men are from the Wagner Group, same group that was in the Ukraine. So now, the central government, the government there in Central Africa, does not or will not do anything to stop these guys. And this has been going on supposedly for a while. However, recently there was an incident in which white, Russian-speaking military-looking guys with no emblems on their uniforms set up a roadblock in Bossagoa. They stopped 13 unarmed men, removed them from a car, beat them, and then shot them all dead. There was another incident. Several others were picked up by Russian-speaking men wearing military fatigues in the middle of Central Africa. They put them in a hole in the ground for weeks. They beat them. They executed 2 of them. So now the government of Central Africa says, wait a minute, there's no secret Russian military contractors here. And Russia's saying, oh, we don't even deal with the Wagner Group. Go figure. However, the massive amount of evidence that's coming out says, yes, they do. That the U.S. and the EU both have made statements to the fact that this group is currently in Africa and being financed by a Russian oligarch who's close to Putin, and they are there basically to exert Russian influence in the region. Isn't that the most interesting story?
Hi, my goodness, he's everywhere.
You can hire a group of guys to go down and destabilize a country. And the Central Africans, the government there, they're like, hey, it's okay, won't watch because it's kind of helping us stay in power.
Well, that's a bottom line. Staying in power.
Yes. So
Okay.
that's crazy stuff.
That's bad. Very, very bad. All right, let's go to Boy from Negros. Interesting. Why 6 senators from U.S. call Philippine government to release Senator Leila de Lima after 2 witnesses recant their testimonies, and why our U.S. are again meddling in our system? Leave us alone. We have our own laws. This is from Boy.
Yeah, these 6 senators, now, just in case you didn't get the question exactly, 6 senators from the U.S.
Yeah.
are demanding that Senator De Lima be released based on these witnesses that recanted. You know, there was big news last week here in the Philippines that these witnesses have recanted their testimony. So this goes back to, in a way, the story I was talking about earlier. And I want you to comment on this, Lolly, and what you think about this. You remember we were talking about the 9,000 bodies that were discovered in Russia from Stalin's purge? You know, anybody that opposed Stalin, they killed him and put him in a pit. And one man did all this research to find those unmarked graves. And here's a man who spent his entire life as a historian. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he was accused of being a pedophile and in prison. Then there was this other man who ran the museum that talked about all the stuff that happened in Russian history, about the history of Stalin and Lenin, whatever, and all the, you know, atrocities. And they had pictures and they had artifacts and all these things. This guy spent his entire life running that museum, and all of a sudden, he was charged by the Putin government with child pedophilia. Boris Yeltsin and his family, they were being investigated for massive corruption. All of a sudden, the prosecutor was arrested, charged with child pedophilia. That case was made by the head of the FSB at that time. You know who the head of the FSB was at that time?
No.
Vladimir Putin.
Ooh,
So,
okay.
in Russia, when you say child pedophilia, people become enraged. It's the best way to attack someone, accuse them, because that will make them a monster, and the public will be enraged and forget maybe about the person that they were investigating. Now, in the Philippines, I know what you're going to say. I'm trying to make this correlation with, you know, in the Philippines, when you want to make a monster, when you want to make somebody that enrages people, what do you call them? Drug dealer. First-year senator who's heading up the human rights in the Philippines and is tasked with dealing the investigating of thousands of killings, and then charged to a man who also happens to be the president of the Philippines. Now back in the country, people get fired up about drug dealers. They do. At that time, the Philippines was very fired up about drugs. It was a big problem in the Philippines. Duterte was fighting the drugs. He was getting it out of the country. You know, kill them all and feed them to the fish in Manila Bay. I mean, it's huge, big issue. So much for the police were killing drug dealers without trials, and they were killing drug users without trials, and they were killing sometimes people that had no history of drugs. So sometimes the people that were doing the killings at that time were not exactly the police. Sometimes it was other people. You just have to accuse somebody of taking drugs, and you can kill them with, you know, impunity. And it was tasks by this. I mean, I'm talking about, this is what I got from the senators. It was task on the first-year senator to investigate whether human rights were being violated. And the evidence continued to mount. It started to look like people were being killed because they were just being killed. It didn't have anything to do with drugs. It was just an excuse for murdering people sometimes. So people began to speak out that, you know, the poorest of the poor are being targeted and people are being murdered, and the police are planting drugs and justifying whatever. This was the story that was going on outside the Philippines. And you know, the world was watching all this unfold. They saw pictures and CCTV videos and read these stories about all these people that were dying, and all this stuff was going on. So the world said at that time, you need to stop this. The President of the United States, this needs to stop. You remember what Duterte said to the President of the United States? We all remember that. So there were some senators that really went out of their way to say that Senator De Lima, who was now being called a drug dealer herself, much of the world thought these charges were trumped up charges, that they weren't real. And now that it's come back around full circle, that the guys that said that she was a drug dealer, that the ones that they put her in jail for 5 years, now they're saying, oh, well, we were coerced into saying this. So now, not only is it those two senators, there's 6 senators split between Republicans and Democrats, which is something you never see. You never see Republicans and Democrats agree on anything, are saying that she needs to be released.
Well, it's easy to say that release her or anybody, not necessarily Senator De Lima, but it's that, like they say.
Who else? Who else are we talking about?
Yeah.
She's the only one that I know she's the only senator I know that was deemed, the one that was investigating the drug crimes, you know, the stuff that was going on about the drug, you know, the extrajudicial killings in the Philippines, and they turned her into a drug dealer. I don't know if there's somebody else, but that's the one that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know. What I'm trying to say here is that there's a case that, as far as I know, there's another case. If it is not, it's not only the drug thing. I think because the last thing I heard is that the DOJ secretary says, well, she can be released through bail. So
yeah, she wants the charges. She wanted the charges completely taken off because she says this whole thing was a lie. This whole thing was a setup. I spent 5 years of my life, and it just happened to come up right at the end of Duterte's term. All of a sudden now everybody's recanting. So she wants the charges completely taken away.
So that's why we need to wait for whatever would be the decision of the court about this issue. And I don't know how the U.S. The senators can really influence, not really influence, but you know, our government listen to this. I mean, our justice system, and I'm sure they're gonna take a look at it. You know, like what are the bases, and we'll see. I mean, the 2 witnesses that recount, and of course the other former Justice Secretary said, why only now? Because is it because election? You know, there's some issues about this, and I personally cannot say that it is true or not because I didn't see anything. You know,
I mean, I know why the U.S. is doing this. I mean, the U.S. sometimes pushes their weight on countries because, especially countries that they give a lot of money to, or they are protecting them militarily, and they see something like this going on, and they're going to say, okay, listen, you're our ally. You can't be doing this kind of thing. You can't take a politician who is against you and put them in jail for things like this, because outside the world, now whether it's true or not, but outside the Philippines, it looked like what it was. It looked like that she was put in jail, that the trumped up charges were made, trying to find something and get somebody to turn her in for something. And the best one was drugs, because in the Philippines, drugs are the worst. That'll turn you into a monster. And so they were able to portray her as a monster, and that way the focus would be taken off away from what the actual thing that was being investigated was, the EJ case. And so that's what, the U.S. sometimes does that sort of thing. The U.S. sometimes does that thing. Whether they should or not, that's a whole nother question. But, so now they are looking, a lot of people, a lot of these guys in the Philippines are sanctioned right now. They can't go to the United States. There's a list of Filipinos now because of this. Yeah. Because of this specific thing, that they're not able to fly in. So I think this is something that the world is watching, because she herself, nobody had ever heard of this woman, and now she's one of the most famous Filipinos in the world.
Yeah, because, you want to be famous, Eric?
Not really. Famous for another reason, but not being put in a jail.
That's why, if you are in the news, if you did something, sometimes even true or not, you will be on the paper. I mean, you will be all over all over. So everybody will but the question there for me is that, this is sometimes my take. Like, is this real? Is this true? That's always my question, because I don't know I listen to
who knows whether these guys were telling the truth before, or whether they're telling the truth now, or it's a little bit in between. I mean, who can tell?
Especially this kind of story. This is not like Putin's story.
I know. I mean, this is, but
it's the news.
Speaking of that, I know there's a question in here about the U.S. ambassador.
Yeah.
Let's move to that question. Where's that question?
Okay. This is from Mon of Manila. Who is the new U.S. ambassador to the Philippines and her background?
Yeah, speaking of bad times to be an ambassador, coming in the middle of this whole thing, Mary Kay Carson from Kansas, of all places, named the new Biden administration, named her as ambassador to the Philippines. She's not some big donor woman with campaign ambitions, whatever. She's been, this is her thing. She's a career diplomat. India, Argentina, China, Ukraine, Hong Kong, Mozambique, a whole bunch of places. I hear she can speak Chinese, and she's going to have her work cut out for her because Duterte is leaving soon. The winds are going to be blowing after him with the ICC. There's a new president coming in, and whether that person's going to be a friend or a foe of America and how they're going to deal with that. The issue of China, the issue of Taiwan, the issue of North Korea. So she's got a lot of stuff to do when she does finally get to the Philippines.
Yeah. Well, is she here already?
No, I mean, they just
Not
confirmed
yet?
her, so I don't think she's here yet.
So she might be here anytime soon. So, it's
Best of luck.
Yeah, I know. Well,
She's
if
gonna
you're
need it.
good, so I'm sure she can handle it.
I hope so.
Well,
Kind of nice having a woman ambassador. They've had a lot of guys in it, so it's interesting to have a woman come in.
all right. Let's go to Nico Palabang. This is very controversial this week. Do you think the cursing of Lorenzo Leviste to his mother, Senator Lauren Legarda, is fair? And why did Rappler publish this issue? All right, let's talk about this.
All right, this is okay. Now, first of all, election is tomorrow. Lolly's got her candidate. I have to just quickly say, I do not support any candidate in this election. Just to make sure, I've lived in the Philippines for 13 years. I've watched 3 different presidents. I'm not ever going to suggest that anybody vote for anybody because I'm a foreigner. I don't think it's our place. I'm saying that because the Lenny people have been yelling at me. The BBM people have been cursing at me. So I find the election very fascinating, and I love watching it. I love how the world looks at it. It's very interesting to me. So in regards to this, now the reason I'm saying this because this is a very touchy subject, and in this letter, and I read it. I had to read it twice. It's not so much about cursing his mother, I think, although he does lay into her with a heavy curse word in the last sentence. But what's interesting about this, first of all, to me, in the Philippines, we have respect to the parents. That's one of the things that rises above all else, something that's very different than, let's say, the United States. So for him to forsaken his mother like this, he is obviously very confused about the woman that taught him about the dark times of martial law and was opposed, to all the things that the Marcoses did back then, and now she is supporting the Marcoses. And many have asked the same question. How can people who lived through the atrocities of the Marcos presidency even be considering voting for his son, who was not only part of it, but trying now to say that it never happened? And I think the main subject of this letter, as it is the subject of the letter and many, many articles of the foreign press, and what I got from this letter is that if you say, or the point that this guy is trying to make, that if you're saying that the Marcoses did not kill thousands of people and torture tens of thousands, including politicians and students and teachers and journalists, you should be ashamed of yourself. According to this letter, and he says, I'm actually reading the letter as I'm talking, the facts are not debatable. They are indeed facts. That this country was in very good standing in Asia before the Marcoses, and then, Marcoses brought corruption to this country, and that corruption has lingered until now. They brought mass murder, they brought mass theft, they brought the end to democracy through Marcos giving himself decades of rule. the denial of truth, the rewriting of the history of the country by his son, that these people who now support the Marcuses, and lived when blood ran through the streets, should now know that they have blood on their own hands now for letting these people back into power.
So what's your take here?
Well, I mean, I went through this letter line by line, and because I had a feeling that this might come up, this letter is not about the campaign, and it's not about policy. It is the same subject that seems to be in just about every single newspaper around the world right now. If you take a look at the news outlets right now, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Al Jazeera, the Hong Kong Standard, CNN World, Japanese Times, Reuters, all the stories they're writing are about the same thing. What they're asking is, how is the Philippines being fooled by a massive, incredibly expensive social media campaign to change history and spread disinformation to win an election? And it's working. Now, this is not my opinion I'm trying to throw at you. I'm just saying that this is what they are writing about now. This is exactly what this senator's son is writing about. Now, the question was, should Rappler have published this letter? Why did they publish this letter? I don't know much about Rappler. We talk about the woman who runs Rappler. We talked about her on the show. I don't know. But the New York Times put out an article this week, and the article was the man who could ruin the Philippines forever. And I think this 31-year-old son of this senator believes in his mind that this is the man who is going to ruin his country. And he's pleading with people, including his mother, to see the truth and to be ashamed of trying to forget the suffering the country went through during the Marcos rule.
Okay. Okay, that is what you have read, and
that seems to be what his point is.
Well, that is a very a lot of Filipinos went very emotional in this issue because, like you said, in the Philippines, we were taught to respect our parents, no matter what kind of parents you have. And for this, sad to say that Senator Legarda experienced this with her own son. There's a lot of support and sympathy that she's getting right now because of what her son did.
And her son is getting incredible amount of things that are being said about, positive things that are being said about, that he has, incredible dignity and whatever, that he was able to bring this out.
Well, that's it depends who's listening and who's watching this. So for us Filipinos, because whatever they heard about the Marcoses, the history of the Philippines, it's already given. It's already there. Whether people believe it or not, it's already there.
Well, it is facts. It's not debatable. This is something I do agree with him on. These are facts. People trying to debate the history of the Marcoses. It's not really debatable.
Okay.
So the question is whether, the question I want to ask you is the question that he's asking his mom, is with all the atrocities and things that happen, should people be ashamed for trying to say that never happened?
Okay. What did Senator Legarda answer that question already? I don't think so. Did she?
I mean, she's backing Bongbong Marcos.
Yeah, it's not backing Bongbong Marcos for whatever reason. So I mean, we're talking about the son. Okay, whatever his point is, it's the decision of the mother whether the decision is right for him or not. It's the mother's decision.
Well, I think the question is what he's trying to say is the question right for the country? That a woman that has constantly been against the Marcoses for most of her political career and now all of a sudden is switching sides. For what reason?
My question there is, why not? People change.
Yeah, but
People change.
What
But
is
then-
what is the reason why she is doing that? And then I
Well-
think that is the question that he thinks that she should be ashamed of, because for whatever reason, whether political gain or money or whatever the reason happens to be that she is switching over to the other side, does she not remember the atrocities that happened back
Okay.
in the Marcos time?
Okay, that would be the question of other people. But, you know, for a lot of people that have spoken about this issue is this, okay? Whatever Senator Legarda believes in, you know, I'm not a fan of Senator Legarda, but my heart goes to somebody, a mother like her, because this is not the right time for this. He should at least say this before, if, you know, when she decided to join the Bongbong Marcos team. Why not? Why only a few days before the election?
I mean, I don't know when this letter. I don't know when this letter was written, but I'm
Yeah, it
assuming
was-
they have
yeah,
they have been arguing about this for a while.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
assuming.
But then, you know,
this is
and
not
then that's
new.
why also Rappler is being questioned of putting this out. Well, of
yeah,
course,
that-
you know,
that I can't say.
any juicy news will be put out there.
I mean,
you know,
yeah.
whether to destroy or to flip somebody.
But the thing is, we're getting away from the point. I mean, the point of the letter is, you know, is what he's saying, this pleading that he is making, it seems like it's almost not necessarily to his mother, but all the people that lived through that time. How could you bring this back? And I think that's the point that he's trying to make.
Well, okay.
And shouldn't you be?
How old is he?
He is 31 years old. He was
31
born in
years old.
1990.
He's still young. Yeah, he's still young. This kid. But
I don't know what that has to do with anything, but okay.
well, because his history is not complete yet. I am on my senior year, so I know the history of this country, and anybody can.
Do you believe that people were tortured and killed during the Marcos time?
There are some, but not. That's not many.
It's not many. Is it more than 3,000?
Even up to now, every administration, let's exaggerate. It's like every year there are tortured happening, not only in the Philippines, but it's like all over. So that is
but we're
not
talking
a
about the
question
Philippines.
anymore.
I mean,
of course there's
no president since Marcos has done that that I know of.
Well, because that's the history that has been, it's everything is put out on the paper. So
well, I think I don't think there's any dispute about what he is saying. I mean, that's one of the things he says, that these are facts and they're not up for debate. And I happen to believe that is true because there's just too much mounting evidence. But I think okay. There's two points to this. One is the fact that it's the son of his mother, and he is having to write something like this where he ends up just cursing at her at the end, saying a really bad word to his mother.
Yeah, that's not that. They can just this is what Filipino.
But this is the passion that he thinks that this is ruining his country, and he's begging his mother and these other people not to do this.
The mother wants to do something for the country. So whether what party she joined, I think it's her right to join any party, not necessarily Bongbong Marcos, at any other party. But the thing is, okay, this is a lot of Filipinos, because we talk about this. They can just argue in their dinner table. They can just argue anywhere, in their room, but not in this kind of, like putting up in the newspaper, talking to who. Why did all of a sudden it came out right in this election time? Few days before election. When it was published? Few days ago, not too long ago.
It was last week, I think. I think it's when it came out. I don't read the Rappler, so I'm not sure. But
that's why they are questioning also the Rappler. Why and what happened to Lorenzo? Well, though he has another brother, which is the opposite, Leandro, the younger one.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into the whole thing about his family, because that's all speculate. There's a whole bunch of things about this family.
Yeah, I know,
there's a whole bunch of speculatory things they want to get to. Mostly try and stick to why he's doing this and why a kid would be at this level. Now, unfortunately, this is what I hate about this show. We don't have enough time to talk about all the things that we need to talk about. And one of the things we were going to talk about was the world watching this election. We're in the final minutes of the show about the world, seeing this election and what they are seeing it for, because the world was not paying any attention at all to the Philippine election, and now they are all paying attention to the Philippine election. So this is going to be an amazing day tomorrow, an amazing day of democracy. It's going to be, even though it's very contentious, it's going to be a great time for, I think, this country.
Yes, and this is my final word for today is this. All right. Tomorrow I'm going to vote. I already have my list of my candidates. It's already written. And I hope after tomorrow, because by this hour tomorrow, the polling precinct is already closed. They close at 7 o'clock tomorrow. So I am praying personally for everybody to be calm. And whoever will win this election, please respect whoever will win. Okay. So stop canceling your friends or your relatives, because this is not going to be healthy. And
Don't
whoever
cancel
wins,
me.
yeah, I mean, we will just support whoever will win, and don't go to the street to protest or rally. Remember, our country is still under pandemic.
Yes.
And remember, we need to help each other to bring back our economy up. And we're going to go to the street and protest because you don't like the guy or the person who win in this election. We're going to have a problem. So guys, we'll see everybody.
Listen to Lolly Tolentino. Everybody wear a mask. Everybody have a great Mother's Day. Everybody have a great election day, great democracy. My name is Eric Lecain with the World News Jam, along with Lolly Tolentino here on DZRJ. We are out of time. Everybody take care. We will see you next week.
The views